All right, let's start with what kind of compensation these CEOs receive. How do they get it?
Sure. So typically at this stage, when they're running these companies, they're getting paid in options. So they have an inherent value when they're granted. And now, whenever their stocks go up, you see these huge gains in the value of their option packages.
Do we know how much they actually get paid in cash? Because a lot of these companies are still profitless.
Sure, yeah, it's a small amount of, small. It's relatively small when you look at other executives and their pay packages. So it is mostly equity, which is why the value of their pay is so high and why they're on our Bloomberg Pay Index. We value compensation as of a company's fiscal year end. So the gains in these biotech shares have really, added to the value of their pay.
So what kind of companies are we talking about, and what do they do?
Sure. So we have a couple of companies. We have Juno and Kite. They're both cancer therapy developers. And then we also have a couple of other companies called Radius and Anacor, and they focus on rare diseases.
What's interesting here is that when I think biotech companies, I think about Biogen, I think about Celgene, Gilead Sciences, Vertex, names that we hear so often are actively traded. They're not in this list.
Right, they're not, and that's why this is so surprising and really exciting for us, because we've crunched these numbers and we've been able to add some guys to this highest paid executives list that you wouldn't necessarily see anywhere else.
So how do they wind up cashing out?
So there's a couple of ways. The biotech industry is very dependent on clinical trials, on bids by larger companies. So once, a Pfizer or, any other big pharmaceutical company comes in and decides they want to buy this company, that's typically when these executives will cash out. Right now,
are they not allowed to cash out before it? Is it M&A contingent?
It depends. It depends on the structure of their options, on the terms of their options. Typically, though, if they're taken over and then fired after the deal, the bigger company says, okay, you've done your job, that's when they can typically cash out on these options.
What does this mean for the executives themselves? The success is there, but these are all paper gains.
Exactly.
At the end of the day.
We had a really great quote from a compensation analyst in this story who said that this wealth can be fleeting. So, you have a good clinical trial one day, and then you have poor results the next day, and your paper gains can go away. It's all dependent on your equity.
Does that sort of make the CEOs want to do M&A more than they would if they weren't compensated through an M&A buyout? Hey, if I'm going to make $1 billion if I get bought out, I'm going to want to push for that.
Yeah, of course. And we actually, when we've looked at the history of some of these executives, we've seen that they've moved from small biotech firm to small biotech firm, kind of selling and selling and selling to bigger companies and cashing out on their comp.